Success rarely begins with money. It begins with an idea that becomes so important to someone that ignoring it is no longer possible. Napoleon Hill introduces this idea through the story of Edwin C. Barnes, a man who decided that he would become a business partner of the famous inventor Thomas Edison. Barnes had no money, no powerful connections, and no obvious reason to believe Edison would take him seriously. He could not even afford a normal train ticket. So he traveled to Edison's laboratory under difficult conditions and arrived looking more like a poor worker than a future business partner. But Barnes did not think of himself as someone searching for an ordinary job. He had a definite purpose. He wanted to work with Edison, not merely for him. Edison did not immediately make Barnes a partner. Barnes began with a small position and waited for an opportunity. Months passed, but his goal remained unchanged. Eventually, Edison developed a business machine that his salespeople did not believe they could sell successfully. Barnes saw the opportunity, offered to sell it, and produced strong results. The partnership he had imagined finally became real. Hill uses this story to establish the central argument of Think and Grow Rich. Great achievement begins when a vague wish becomes a definite desire, and that desire begins directing a person's thoughts, decisions, and actions. The title may sound as though thinking alone can magically produce wealth, but the book's practical message is more demanding than that. Hill asks readers to identify exactly what they want, build confidence in their ability to achieve it, create a plan, work with other people, and continue after temporary failure. The mind is the starting point, but thought must eventually become organized action. Blink 1. A definite desire is the starting point of achievement. Most people have wishes. They would like to earn more money, build a successful company, find a better career, or create something meaningful. But a wish is usually too weak to survive difficulty. The moment progress becomes slow or painful, the wish disappears. Hill distinguishes an ordinary wish from what he calls a burning desire. A burning desire is specific. It has a clear target, a reason, and a sense of personal commitment. Barnes did not merely hope to become successful in business. He decided that he would work with Edison and remained focused on that goal until an opportunity appeared. Hill believes this level of clarity changes behavior. When people know exactly what they want, they begin noticing useful information, relationships, and opportunities that they previously ignored. Their decisions become easier because they can judge whether an action moves them closer to or farther from their purpose. For financial goals, Hill recommends creating a definite statement. Decide the exact amount of money you want. Determine what you will provide in exchange for it. Choose a date by which you intend to obtain it, and create a plan for beginning. The plan does not need to be perfect. It needs to be specific enough to produce action. This is important because many people focus only on what they want to receive. They want wealth, recognition, or independence, but they never seriously consider what value they will give in return. Money normally follows the creation of something useful. A person may provide a product, a service, specialized knowledge, leadership, entertainment, or a solution to an expensive problem. The desire for wealth becomes more practical when it is connected to the question, what will I contribute? Hill also recommends writing the goal down and reading it regularly. The purpose is to prevent everyday distractions from replacing the larger objective. A goal that is considered once and then forgotten has little power. A goal that repeatedly influences decisions can gradually reshape a life. But desire alone remains fragile. People can know exactly what they want and still stop because they do not believe they are capable of achieving it. Desire, therefore, needs support from faith. Blink 2. Faith grows from repeated thought and suggestion. Hill uses the word faith to describe confidence in a desired outcome, especially before there is enough evidence to guarantee success. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means developing enough belief to begin acting while the result is still uncertain. Almost every ambitious goal contains a period during which success looks unlikely. A new company may have few customers, a beginner may lack skill, an investor may see little progress for years. Without confidence, People interpret these early difficulties as proof that the goal is impossible. Hill argues that faith can be strengthened through autosuggestion, the deliberate repetition of thoughts and instructions to oneself. The subconscious mind, he believes, is influenced by the ideas a person repeatedly accepts. If someone continually thinks about failure, weakness, and embarrassment, those ideas begin shaping decisions. The person may avoid opportunities, quit early, or behave cautiously in situations that require courage. Repeated thoughts of purpose and capability can create a different pattern. This does not mean that repeating positive sentences automatically creates wealth. A person cannot simply announce that success is coming while refusing to learn, plan, or work. Autosuggestion is useful when it changes behavior. A written goal repeated every day keeps the objective visible. It reminds the individual what must be done and can help replace temporary doubt with renewed effort. Emotion is especially important. Words repeated without attention become empty. Hill believes that thoughts supported by desire and feeling enter the mind more deeply than words repeated mechanically. This is why someone who genuinely wants a result behaves differently from someone who merely thinks the result would be pleasant. Strong belief also changes how people interpret setbacks. A person with little confidence treats one rejection as a final verdict. A person with faith treats the same rejection as information and looks for another approach. The external event may be identical. The internal interpretation produces a different response. Faith should not become blind certainty. Some plans are poor and some goals must be revised. But without enough belief to continue through uncertainty, even an excellent plan may never receive the time required to succeed. Once desire and faith are established, they must be supported by useful knowledge. Blink 3. Knowledge creates value only when it is organized and applied. Education is often associated with success, but Hill argues that general knowledge alone does not create wealth. A person may know a great deal and still have no practical method for using that knowledge. What matters is specialized knowledge connected to a definite purpose. A physician needs knowledge of medicine. An engineer needs technical expertise. An entrepreneur may need to understand a particular market, customer problem, or distribution system. The important question is not how much information a person possesses. It is whether that information can be organized to produce a useful result. Hill points out that successful people do not need to know everything personally. They need to know what knowledge is required and where it can be found. A business leader may depend on accountants, lawyers, engineers, researchers, and salespeople. The leader's value may come from organizing these different abilities around one objective. This idea becomes even more important as industries grow more complex. No individual can master every subject. The ability to cooperate with knowledgeable people can be more valuable than trying to become an expert in everything. But knowledge describes what already exists. Creating something new requires imagination. Hill divides imagination into two general forms. The first rearranges existing ideas into new combinations. Most business innovation works this way. A company may combine an established product with a better delivery system, a different customer group, or a more efficient business model. The second form involves sudden inspiration, an original idea that seems to arrive unexpectedly. Whether an idea develops gradually or appears quickly, it still needs to be tested and developed. Hill illustrates the commercial power of imagination through the story of a doctor who created a drink formula and sold it to a businessman. The formula alone had limited value. The businessman's imagination, marketing, and organization transformed it into what became Coca-Cola. An idea does not become valuable simply because it is clever. It needs a practical structure. Many people dismiss ideas because they initially appear small. But nearly every large company began as an uncertain concept that could easily have been ignored. Imagination allows a person to see what does not yet exist. Specialized knowledge provides the ability to build it. The next step is converting both into an organized plan. Blink 4. Plans create movement, but decisions create commitment. A goal without a plan remains a dream. Hill advises readers to identify the actions, resources, and people required to move from desire to achievement. The first plan may fail. That is normal. Hill repeatedly distinguishes between a failed plan and a failed goal. When one approach does not work, the person should examine the weakness, make adjustments, and create another plan. Temporary defeat often means that the method was wrong, not that the objective was impossible. This is where many people stop. They interpret one unsuccessful attempt as evidence that they lack ability. Hill instead recommends treating failure as feedback. A business may need a different product, price, or distribution channel. A job seeker may need stronger qualifications or a new approach. An investor may need a longer time horizon or better control of risk. The plan must remain flexible even when the purpose remains firm. Effective plans also require leadership. Hill describes valuable leaders as people who possess courage, self-control, fairness, responsibility, and a clear understanding of the work. A leader who blames others for every mistake weakens the organization. A leader who accepts responsibility earns trust and can correct problems faster. Planning becomes meaningful only when people make decisions. Hill claims that unsuccessful people often delay decisions and then change them quickly under the influence of other people. Successful people tend to decide more carefully, but remain committed unless new evidence justifies a change. Indecision creates its own form of failure. A person may spend years waiting for perfect information, the perfect opportunity, or complete confidence. But these conditions rarely arrive. Important decisions must often be made while uncertainty remains. This does not mean acting carelessly. It means gathering enough information, choosing a direction, and accepting responsibility for the result. Public opinion can be especially dangerous. People may abandon valuable goals because friends, relatives, or colleagues respond with doubt. Those critics may have good intentions, but they are often protecting the person from risk according to their own fears and experiences. Hill advises readers to be selective about whose opinions they accept. A definite decision creates focus, but a decision has little value if it disappears at the first sign of resistance. That is why persistence becomes the bridge between planning and achievement. Blink 5. Persistence turns temporary defeat into useful experience. Hill tells the story of R.U. Darby, whose uncle became convinced that he had discovered gold. The family raised money, purchased equipment, and began mining. At first, they found enough gold to believe that a major deposit was close. Then the gold disappeared. They continued drilling, but eventually became discouraged. They sold their machinery to a local dealer and walked away. The dealer hired a mining engineer to examine the site. The engineer concluded that the previous miners had stopped only a few feet away from the main gold deposit. The dealer continued drilling and earned a fortune. Darby later used the lesson in his career as an insurance salesperson. He decided that he would not allow rejection to stop him as easily as the failed mine had. Hill uses the story to show that people often quit because they cannot see how close they are to a breakthrough. Of course, persistence does not guarantee that every project will succeed. Continuing forever with a terrible idea can waste time and money. Useful persistence combines commitment to the goal with flexibility about the method. When a plan repeatedly fails, the answer is not necessarily to repeat the same action with greater intensity. The answer may be to collect better information, seek expert help, or redesign the approach. Hill believes persistence grows from several sources. A clear purpose provides a reason to continue. Desire supplies energy. Confidence reduces fear. A practical plan creates direction, while supportive people prevent discouragement from becoming permanent. Weak desire produces weak persistence. When the goal is only mildly attractive, almost any obstacle becomes a reason to stop. Persistence is especially important because failure often arrives before success. The first version of a product may fail. The first sales effort may be rejected. The first plan may reveal weaknesses that were invisible at the beginning. These outcomes are painful, but they also provide knowledge that could not have been gained through planning alone. The difference between defeat and failure is often interpretation. Defeat is an event. Failure becomes permanent only when the person decides there will be no further attempt. Individual determination matters, but Hill does not believe achievement is a solitary process. Some goals are too large for one person's knowledge, energy, and judgment. They require coordinated minds. Blink 6. The mastermind multiplies individual ability. Hill calls the organized cooperation of two or more people a mastermind. The idea is not simply to gather a large group. It is to bring together people whose knowledge, experience, and abilities complement one another and who are willing to work toward a shared purpose. A strong group can see weaknesses that one individual misses. One person may understand the product, another may understand customers, and a third may understand finance. Together, they can make better decisions than any one of them could make alone. The value is not limited to technical knowledge. Supportive partners can provide confidence during difficult periods, challenge weak assumptions, and prevent temporary frustration from destroying a long-term objective. Hill connects this principle with the achievements of major industrialists such as Andrew Carnegie, who did not personally possess every skill required to build a vast steel organization. His strength came partly from surrounding himself with people whose abilities could be coordinated. This is an important correction to the popular image of the self-made individual. Even highly successful people depend on employees, partners, mentors, customers, and institutions. The question is not whether a person needs other people. The question is whether those relationships are organized constructively. A poorly chosen group can weaken performance. Constant conflict, jealousy, and lack of trust can make cooperation impossible. Hill therefore emphasizes harmony. Members do not need to agree about everything, but they must respect one another and remain committed to the shared purpose. A mastermind also creates accountability. A private goal can be postponed without explanation. A commitment made to respected partners becomes harder to ignore. The people around us influence what we consider normal, possible, and acceptable. A group that expects discipline can raise personal standards. A group dominated by fear and excuses can lower them. Choosing associates is therefore part of choosing a future. But external cooperation is only one source of energy. Hill also explores the strong emotions within the individual and asks how they can be redirected toward achievement. Blink 7. Strong emotion can be redirected into creativity and productive action. One of the book's more unusual principles is what Hill calls sexual transmutation. His basic argument is that sexual desire is a powerful human drive, and that this energy can be redirected into creativity, ambition, leadership, and focused work. The useful part of this idea is broader than sexuality. Strong emotions contain energy. Desire, love, enthusiasm, anger, and even frustration can influence concentration and action. Left uncontrolled, they may produce impulsive behavior. Directed toward a meaningful goal, they can become motivation. Many people attempt to remove emotion from professional life. Hill takes the opposite position. He believes exceptional achievement often requires emotional intensity, provided that intensity is disciplined rather than destructive. A person who deeply cares about a goal can work with a level of focus that is difficult to create through logic alone. But emotion also influences the subconscious mind. Hill describes the subconscious as the part of the mind that stores repeated thoughts, fears, beliefs, and emotional patterns. People may consciously want success while repeatedly feeding themselves thoughts of failure. They imagine embarrassment, criticism, and everything that could go wrong. These thoughts gradually influence behavior, often without the person recognizing the connection. Hill recommends deliberately supplying the mind with thoughts connected to purpose, confidence, and achievement. Again, this should not be interpreted as a magical law under which thoughts directly attract money. The practical effect is behavioral. A person who repeatedly focuses on solutions becomes more likely to search for them. Someone who expects rejection may avoid making the attempt. The subconscious mind also continues working on problems when conscious attention moves elsewhere. People sometimes discover an answer after resting, walking, or focusing on another activity. The solution appears sudden, but the mind may have been reorganizing information in the background. For Hill, the quality of thought matters because thoughts influence emotion, and emotion influences action. The final principles extend this idea into the brain, intuition, and what Hill calls the sixth sense. Blink 8. Intuition becomes useful when it is supported by experience. Hill describes the brain as both a receiver and transmitter of thought, reflecting the language and scientific ideas of his time. Some of his claims are speculative, but the practical lesson is that mental environment matters. The ideas people consume and the people they spend time with influence what they notice, expect, and imagine. A person surrounded by constant pessimism may become unable to recognize opportunity. A person exposed to ambitious thinkers may begin asking different questions. Hill's final principle is the sixth sense. He describes it as a form of intuition that helps people recognize possibilities or dangers before they can fully explain their reasoning. Intuition should not replace evidence, but experienced people often develop rapid judgment because their minds have absorbed patterns over many years. An experienced business owner may sense that a deal is wrong. A skilled physician may notice a small detail that suggests a larger problem. The conclusion appears immediate, but it may be based on knowledge the person cannot instantly express. Hill believes this form of judgment develops only after the earlier principles have been practiced. Clear desire, specialized knowledge, planning, decisions, persistence, and cooperation give intuition something useful to work with. Without experience, a strong feeling may simply be fear or wishful thinking. This distinction matters because fear is one of the greatest obstacles in the book. Hill identifies several common fears, including poverty, criticism, poor health, lost love, old age, and death. Fear of poverty can make people so cautious that they never pursue opportunities. Fear of criticism can keep them inside careers and lifestyles chosen mainly to satisfy other people. Fear often disguises itself as reasonable delay. A person says the timing is not right, more preparation is needed, or the idea is unrealistic. Sometimes these concerns are valid, but sometimes they are explanations created to avoid emotional discomfort. Hill asks readers to examine their excuses honestly. Is the obstacle truly external, or has fear been converted into a convincing story? Courage does not eliminate risk. It allows action despite the existence of risk. When the book's principles are brought together, they form a system for moving from an internal goal to an external result. Blink 9. Thought is the beginning, but organized action creates the result. Think and Grow Rich is sometimes interpreted as a promise that positive thinking alone produces money. That interpretation misses the most useful parts of the book. Hill's philosophy begins with thought, because every deliberate achievement must first exist as an idea. But the idea is followed by demanding steps. You must define exactly what you want. You must decide what value you will provide in exchange. You must build enough confidence to begin before success is guaranteed. You must acquire specialized knowledge, use imagination, and convert the idea into a practical plan. You must make decisions, work with capable people, and continue through temporary defeat. Thinking begins the process. Action completes it. The book also recognizes that wealth can mean more than money. A person may seek freedom, meaningful work, creative achievement, strong relationships, or the ability to contribute to others. Money is one possible result of organized purpose, but it is not the only form of richness. The greatest strength of Hill's message is its emphasis on personal responsibility. People cannot control every event. Economic conditions, luck, health, and opportunity all influence outcomes, but they can influence the clarity of their goals, the quality of their preparation, and their willingness to continue. The book's weakness appears when its language makes success sound more predictable than it really is. Desire does not guarantee wealth. Faith cannot remove competition, poor timing, or bad luck. Persistence cannot transform every idea into a successful business, but these principles can still improve the probability of achievement. A person with no clear objective is unlikely to reach one. A person who does not believe action is worthwhile may never begin. A person who refuses to learn, plan, or cooperate will struggle to create value. And a person who stops after every rejection will rarely remain active long enough to benefit from experience. Edwin Barnes did not succeed merely because he imagined a partnership with Edison. He placed himself in an environment where the opportunity could appear. He accepted a small beginning, observed what the business needed, and acted when others hesitated. His thoughts gave him direction. His behavior produced the result. That is the practical meaning of Think and Grow Rich. Your dominant thoughts influence what you pursue. What you pursue influences the skills you develop, the people you meet, and the decisions you make. Those repeated decisions gradually shape your future. Success rarely arrives from one dramatic moment. It is usually built through a definite purpose, followed by many ordinary actions performed with unusual consistency. Key takeaways from the book. Think and Grow Rich teaches that achievement begins with a clear and definite desire. That desire must be strengthened by belief, supported by specialized knowledge, and converted into an organized plan. Hill emphasizes decisive action, persistence, and cooperation with capable people. Setbacks should be treated as information rather than final failure, while strong emotions should be directed toward productive work. The book's central lesson is not that thought alone creates wealth. Thought provides direction, but success requires planning, learning, action, and the determination to continue when the first attempt does not work.